This is CBN NewsWatch.
It's Thursday, May 20th, 2021. I'm Ephraim Graham. Thank you so much for joining us. Ahead today, Israel launching more strikes on Hamas despite mounting pressure from the United States. Now growing talk that a ceasefire could be coming soon. President Biden's Supreme Court Commission holds its first meeting, and one of the key questions it faces: should more justices be added to the High Court? Did the COVID-19 pandemic actually begin in a lab in China? And could your tax dollars have helped to pay for it? We're going to take a look. And one impact of the COVID pandemic: millions more Americans turned to the Bible. All those stories and more are ahead in this edition of CBN NewsWatch. I want to begin this half hour in the Middle East, where Israel unleashed another wave of airstrikes across the Gaza Strip earlier today, pushing ahead despite U.S. calls to wind down the offensive against Hamas rulers who have fired thousands of rockets at Israel. Explosions shook Gaza City, and large plumes of smoke were seen across the Gaza skyline as the Israeli military targeted military infrastructure. Despite the mounting pressure from the United States, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu appears determined to inflict maximum damage on Hamas. Still, a senior Hamas official said he expected a truce soon. Our CBN News Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell joins us now from Jerusalem. So, Chris, do you expect a ceasefire, and what does Hamas mean by a ceasefire?
Yeah, Ephraim, I do expect a ceasefire sooner or later. There is reports right now it will start tomorrow on Friday here. Netanyahu is getting a lot of pressure from different places, the U.S., the EU, and the UN. The question is, how long will Prime Minister Netanyahu go? And how long is he going to withstand external and probably internal pressure right now? For Hamas, and it's maybe important for people to understand, it will be a ceasefire, but what they call it would be a hudna. Now, a hudna in Islamic terms is a pause in fighting till you can regain your strength. It's not a cessation of hostilities altogether. And really to know what's going on, what's behind the rockets. It's not just a matter of 4,000 rockets or so coming, but in Islamic terms, and for Hamas, the Muslim Brotherhood, this is a religious war by Hamas on Israel. And they consider Jews dhimmis, second-class citizens, because they rejected Muhammad. So when you see things in a religious and a spiritual context, you see things much differently. For example, Hamas says very clearly in their charter that Jews must be killed. They cite a verse in the Quran about that Israel must be destroyed. So they see this in the long-term view. The last major battle with Israel was back in 2014, and what this hudna or ceasefire will do is just get them ready for the next battle. And this whole religious context, Ephraim, is really sometimes it's lost in the West, with the politicians and the media not seeing this through the worldview of Hamas Muslim Brotherhood. It's a completely different worldview from what we expect in the West, and but they see it differently. And this is driving Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and many of these groups inside Gaza.
So, Chris, what pressure is being put on Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu?
Well, first of all, he's getting pressure from Joe Biden, president of the U.S. He's had 4 calls already. Each call seems to be increasing the pressure on Netanyahu to wind down the escalation and look for a ceasefire. And then Biden himself is getting that pressure from the so-called squad, AOC, Ilhan Omar, and others pressuring from the left wing of the Democratic Party against President Biden. That includes Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren in the Senate. So this is where he's getting the pressure from. Also from the EU and the UN, and almost from the very time the fighting began back about 10 days ago, the mediation was starting right now. And internally, Ephraim, this pressure from Israelis really to keep the fighting going. And so we're hearing that certainly from people on the southern border, and some people are actually calling for the bodies of Israeli soldiers to be returned from Gaza.
Chris, how has this war affected the formation of an Israeli government?
It completely upset it, Ephraim. Right now, they were on the verge of an agreement about 10 days ago. Then the Islamist Party, Ra'am, dropped out. Then Naftali Bennett dropped out. And from this a coalition that Yair Lapid was trying to cobble together. Right now, Bennett has openly supported Netanyahu, and it's really elevated the status of Netanyahu. He's known here as Mr. Security. Many see him rising to the challenge. Yair Lapid has about 2 weeks left. We may go to fifth elections, believe it or not, or we could have separate elections for the prime minister.
What are the wider implications of the conflict in the Middle East?
Well, it's never a vacuum over here, Ephraim. So what's happening in Gaza and the southern and central Israel really does have an impact throughout the region. The question for many is, will Israel restore deterrence, or will they be seen weaker or stronger coming out of that? We interviewed Ambassador Dermer, the former Israeli ambassador to the U.S. He mentioned that very important. And the eroding deterrence on Israel would weaken the Abraham Accords and the relationships with some of the Arab nations here who are enemies of Muslim Brotherhood and Hamas. And what also has happened, Ephraim, is it's raised the role of Iran in the Middle East. They funded, supplied, and armed Hamas, one of their many proxies in the region, in Iraq, Syria, Yemen, Lebanon, and Gaza. And so that's another impact here in the region.
All right, Chris Mitchell reporting for us from Jerusalem. Chris, thank you so much. Back here in the United States, President Biden's plan to potentially overhaul the United States Supreme Court began to take shape Wednesday as members of his newly formed commission met for the first time to talk about how the High Court might be reformed. One big question on their plate: should the number of justices on the bench be expanded beyond the current 9 seats? Our George Thomas has this look at the commission's proceedings.
America has had 9 justices on the Supreme Court since 1869. But now that conservatives hold a 6-3 majority on the High Court, some Democratic lawmakers and liberal groups say it's out of balance and needs to be fixed.
The court's illegitimate far-right majority, installed through hyper-partisan political schemes, will put even settled precedents on our rights at risk.
Liberal groups like Demand Justice among those pushing a Democratic bill to so-called pack the court. President Biden is not a fan of packing the court, but he announced the commission to study expanding and altering the Supreme Court. On Wednesday, 36 members of the commission met for the first time virtually.
I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
And I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
To discuss reforming the High Court. The commission, made up of dozens of scholars and activists, mostly liberal and some conservatives, met to lay the groundwork for the group's agenda.
We definitely have our work cut out for us.
The idea of expanding the number of justices getting the most attention.
We plan to look, as others have indicated, not only at current proposals, but also proposals about membership and size that have been floated at other times in American history.
The commission will also explore if Congress has the power to reverse Supreme Court rulings and whether justices should serve on the bench for life.
We're going to look at the justices' length of service and how frequently the court's membership should turn over. And this is going to include proposals for term limits and mandatory retirement.
Conservatives have blasted Biden's proposal to overhaul the High Court. After all, Biden in 1982 said packing the court was, quote, a bonehead idea.
There's not a problem on the court. The only problem is that the left for years has relied upon the judiciary to do its bidding.
Senator Lindsey Graham telling CBN's Abigail Robertson that all that changed when President Trump put 3 conservative judges on the bench, tilting it in their favor.
And the goal of the liberal left is to stack it with liberals to undercut the conservative majority that all of us have worked so hard to obtain through the right process.
The group will hold several more meetings over the next 6 months before giving the president their analysis. George Thomas, CBN News.
Texas Republican Governor Greg Abbott has signed a bill that bans abortions after a fetal heartbeat can be detected, possibly as early as 6 weeks. The bill would go into effect in September, but federal courts have mostly blocked states from enforcing similar measures. More than a dozen other states also have fetal heartbeat abortion bans, but the Supreme Court this week agreed to take up a Mississippi law that bans abortion after 15 weeks of pregnancy. And a favorable ruling could lay the groundwork for more restrictions, including heartbeat bills. Coming up, Israel's former representative to the United Nations, Danny Danon, tells CBN News that even though President Biden has asked Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu to try for a ceasefire, the Israeli government has been focused on protecting its citizens as Hamas rains down missiles on them. We're going to hear from him when we come back.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep as the world watches from the outside.
It's a big diplomatic tug of war here in the Middle East.
Go inside the story with Jerusalem Dateline.
Israeli archaeologists are talking about a discovery that could change the thinking about the Temple Mount.
Join CBN Jerusalem Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell and get the biblical perspective on the events shaping the world.
It's what starts in Israel then ends up going to other places.
Watch Jerusalem Dateline Friday night at 8:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Your news channel. Your shows, the stories you care about, anytime you want, anywhere you want. Download the CBN News app today.
President Biden is pressuring Israel to end hostilities with Hamas. During his fourth phone call to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Wednesday, Biden reportedly asked the Israeli Prime Minister to begin a quick path to rapid de-escalation and a ceasefire in Gaza. Appearing on this week's episode of The Global Lane, Danny Danone, Israel's former representative to the United Nations, says terrorist missile attacks targeting the country are unrelenting. So right now, protecting Israeli citizens is the government's only concern.
We are dealing with a vicious terrorist organization. It's very hard to find logic when you deal with a terrorist organization. They started this cycle of violence. They are targeting our civilians. They are putting their civilians in the front line as human shields. And our policy, it's very clear. It will be quiet in Gaza only when it will be quiet here in Israel. After 3,000 rockets and missiles, we are determined to restore the deterrence and to protect our civilians.
Well, Hamas says it's now targeting Israeli military bases. Your government's energy minister, Yuval Steinitz, has called for an IDF takeover of Gaza to disarm Hamas. What do you think of that idea?
So the cabinet decided before the operation that the goal will be to target Hamas and his leaders and to restore deterrence. I don't think in this cycle we are speaking about a major ground operation. Maybe eventually we will have to do it. We will have to clean up the vicious terrorist organization and the leaders, because it's not only us suffering from Hamas, also the people of Gaza. They suffer much more than anyone else. Look at the regime. In the last few years, they put all their efforts and money into building rockets and missiles instead of investing in health, infrastructure, education. So the day the Hamas will be destroyed, it will be a big celebration in Israel, but also in Gaza.
Yeah, it seems like their leadership is living quite well while the average Palestinian is suffering. So Here in the U.S., former Vice President Pence wrote an article this week asserting that President Biden's reversal of Donald Trump's Middle East policy has led to this violence because the United States is now, according to him, displaying weakness in the Middle East. Your thoughts?
So there is one issue that we are worried about. It's the intention of the new administration to re-enter the agreement with Iran, the JCPOA. You cannot appease those guys. You cannot appease evil. You have to fight evil. And if, God forbid, the U.S. will re-enter the agreement, it means that Tehran will spend billions of dollars on terrorism. It will come to Hamas, to Hezbollah, to all of our enemies.
Do you think some of the money that the U.S. Biden administration has sent to the Palestinians has actually been used to purchase rockets from Iran to target Israel?
So we know for a fact that even humanitarian aid that's coming into Gaza, Hamas is controlling everything, and they are taking funds and instruments in order to build their military. So basically, it's a terror organization who is taking advantage of the situation. So I always told my colleagues, before you give a donation to Gaza, make sure you know where the money goes to.
Follow the money. Now, we've seen large protests against Israel around the world, from as far away as Argentina to thousands rallying right here in the United States in Chicago. It seems Israel's losing this media war to win the hearts and minds of people. So how important is it to win over public opinion?
Well, it's important. We know that when we fight, we have to win 3 battles. First, the fight on the ground. Second, the diplomatic warfare. And third, the PR. But I'm not worried. You know, I think that the average American, when he sees that a terror organization is sending thousands of rockets into our cities, he understands that we are defending ourselves. Imagine there would have been one rocket flying from your neighboring countries into Washington, D.C. What would have been the response of the U.S. in such a scenario?
Well, last month in London, Pastor John Sherwood was arrested for preaching a biblical view of marriage. It was deemed homophobic speech, yet we see a convoy of pro-Palestinians shouting, "F the Jews," and rape their daughters. Nothing happened for that anti-Semitic hate speech. No arrests were made. It seems we see a lot of this when Israel takes defensive action against Hamas. So how concerned are you about rising anti-Semitism in Europe and right here in the United States?
I am very concerned about that. We have seen anti-Semitic attacks all around the world, even in Los Angeles, where we saw innocent Jews being attacked only because they were identified as Jews. We call the governments to take strong actions against those radicals and to put them in jail. We shouldn't sit idly by when you see those kinds of attacks.
Okay, Israel's representative to the UN, Ambassador Danny Danon, thank you for sharing your time and insights. We appreciate you.
Thank you very much.
And for a look at other important stories in the news, including an interview with conservative author Victor Davis Hanson, be sure to tune in to the Global Lane this evening at 8:30 Eastern Standard Time. You can find it on the CBN News Channel. Still ahead, did COVID-19 come from a lab in China, and could your tax dollars have helped to pay for the research that started the virus outbreak? We're going to take a look at those questions when we come back.
Hey, if you're tired and exhausted all day, you can't think clearly, and you really just need a cup or even a pot of coffee to get through your day, then join me, Dr. Josh Axe, for this new series where I'm going to teach you how to transform your diet and use essential oils and supplements to get a better night's sleep.
Wake up to your best life. Call 1-800-700-7000 to get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
It's about the competition.
I kind of put that pressure on myself, and I think people had expectations.
It's about overcoming.
We use this phrase all the time: keep chopping, keep practicing hard.
It's about going the distance.
You know, I think as a father, it's my job, to lead. Just be the best husband and father I can be.
Watch Going the Distance with Sean Brown Saturday night at 7:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Orphans Promise is committed to loving and serving at-risk children, to helping keep families together, and to creating opportunities for strong and sustainable communities around the world. We're working in over 60 countries around the world, and with your help, we can do even more. There's an old African proverb I love that says, if you want to run fast, run alone. But if you want to run far, run together. At Orphans Promise, we want to run far so we can touch the lives of as many orphaned and vulnerable children as possible. But we don't want to go alone. We're out to change the world, one child, one family, one community at a time. Will you join us?
Your tax dollars may have funded research that started the coronavirus pandemic. It is called gain of function research, and it was conducted in the Wuhan Institute of Virology in China in late 2019. Scientists are now calling for a new investigation, and lawmakers on Capitol Hill are demanding answers. CBN medical reporter Lori Johnson brings us the story.
Gain-of-function research is when scientists manipulate a virus to do more than it usually does. For example, causing a virus that usually infects only animals to infect humans. This type of research can be used to develop cures and vaccines or biological warfare. The Wuhan Institute of Virology reportedly conducted gain-of-function research on coronaviruses in late 2019. That's about the same time when dozens in the Wuhan area began to fall ill. Streets near the institute were then quickly closed. Nevertheless, a World Health Organization team concluded a laboratory origin of the pandemic was extremely unlikely and animal-to-human infection very likely. Now, months later, 18 scientists want a new investigation. In a letter published in the journal Science, they write, theories of accidental release from a lab and zoonotic spillover both remain viable. On Capitol Hill, lawmakers also demanding answers about whether American taxpayers funded this gain-of-function research at the Wuhan Institute of Virology.
Dr. Fauci, do you still support funding of the NIH funding of the lab in Wuhan?
Senator Paul, with all due respect, you are entirely and completely incorrect that the NIH has not ever and does not now fund gain-of-function research in the Wuhan Institute.
Government scientists like yourself who favor gain-of-function research.
I don't favor gain-of-function research in China. You are saying things that are not correct.
Ranking Intelligence Committee member Devin Nunes disputes Dr. Fauci's assertion. Nunes says as gain-of-function research stopped in the U.S., the National Institutes of Health gave millions to the nonprofit EcoHealth Alliance, a portion of which then went to the Wuhan lab.
When it was banned here in the U.S. or put on pause, the Wuhan research was continuing and likely with U.S. dollars that we still don't have an accounting for.
NIH Director Dr. Francis Collins said the agency never approved funding that supported gain-of-function research, but did admit we can't absolutely prevent somebody who has an intention of deceiving us about how they've used the funds. EcoHealth Alliance President Peter Daszak describes their research.
And we've now found, after 6 or 7 years of doing this, over 100 new SARS-related coronaviruses, very close to SARS. Some of them get into human cells in the lab. Some of them can cause SARS disease in humanized mouse models and are untreatable with therapeutic monoclonals, and you can't vaccinate against them with the vaccine. So these are a clear and present danger.
Daszak was part of the WHO team that determined the pandemic likely began from animal to human transmission, not a lab leak. Some say his ties to the Wuhan lab present a conflict of interest. So while there's no evidence to prove the pandemic began in a Chinese lab, pressure mounts for a more rigorous investigation than before, to include whether the U.S. may have played a role. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
Coming up, where did Americans turn during the pandemic? A new report says millions more turned to the Bible. We're going to have that story for you when we come back. Please stay with us.
Daddy?
Yeah, buddy?
How many nickels are in a dollar?
There are 20 nickels in a dollar.
How do birds fly? Does milk really make my bones stronger?
Yeah.
Daddy, when we die, will we go to heaven?
Do you have the answer to life's biggest question? Call the 700 Club. We'll help you find answers to the important questions life brings your way.
Watch breaking news, in-depth exclusive stories and programs from health to entertainment you won't find anywhere else. The CBN News Channel, a perspective you can trust. Enjoy credible news reporting from around the world. Discover inspiring programs and stories of hope, all in one place from a Christian perspective. The CBN News Channel, a perspective you can trust. To watch the CBN News Channel, download the app or visit cbnnewschannel.com.
Hello, I'm Dr. David Perlmutter, board-certified neurologist and #1 New York Times bestselling author. Wouldn't it be great to boost your energy, eliminate brain fog, and even reverse brain disease? Well, you can, and I'm going to show you how, along with some of the world's most well-respected brain experts in this DVD, Protect Your Brain.
Get Protect Your Brain, a free DVD only from the Christian Broadcasting Network, featuring experts on the cutting edge of neuroscience and brain health.
No matter how many times you've failed in the past, you really can do this.
In Protect Your Brain, you'll discover simple strategies to keep your brain young and healthy. Improve your memory. Discover the gut-brain connection. In Protect Your Brain, get your free copy at cbn.com or call 1-800-700-7000.
If you want to improve the quality of your life, get the DVD Protect Your Brain and get it today.
The American Bible Society says that more than 10 million more Americans turned to the Bible over the past year of the COVID-19 pandemic than in years before. Its 2021 State of the Bible report found that 181 million Americans opened a Bible during the past year, compared to the 169 million who used the Bible at least occasionally in earlier years. And 1 in 4 adults said they read the Bible more frequently over this past year than in prior years. The American Bible Society's findings coincide with the experiences of young people, of Youth for Christ, which saw a major spike in the sale of its YFC3 Story Bible during the pandemic. With that, it's time now for your Thursday Thankful. I hope you'll join me in this prayer of gratitude. Father, thank you for your love. It's higher than any mountain, it's deeper than any ocean, and it's wider than any sea. There simply is no greater love. With that prayer of gratitude, I encourage you to make this entire day a Thankful Thursday, and it is still not too late to have a wonderful, wonderful week. That is going to do it for this edition of CBN News Watch. You can always find more of our programs on the CBN News Channel. You can find them there at any time as well as online at cbnnews.com. We'd love to know what you think about the stories you've seen here today or any day. Email us, newswatch@cbn.com. And of course, you can always reach out and touch us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We hope you'll join us again right here next time. Make this a wonderful day. We'll see you tomorrow.